She was a princess sent to be married for peace. By nightfall, her husband was dead. By morning, she was pushed alone into the ocean, on a ship with no sails, no rudder, and no way back. Prepare yourself for the man of law's tale. So our host looked up at the sky. He wasn't an expert in astronomy or anything, but he knew enough. He saw the sun had climbed high, about 45 degrees up. He watched the shadows of the trees shortening on the ground, and he did the math in his head. It was the 28th of April. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly he pulled his horse around. "Listen up, everyone," he shouted to the group. "A quarter of the day is already gone. For the love of God and St. John, don't waste time. Time is precious. It steals away from us while we sleep, and it slips through our fingers when we're awake. It's like a stream coming down a mountain. It never flows backward." He looked serious. "Seneca and the philosophers were right. You should mourn the loss of time more than the loss of gold. You can earn money back, but once time is gone, it destroys us. It's never coming back, so let's not rot here in idleness." He turned to the man of law. "Sir Lawyer," he said, "you agreed to the bargain. Tell us a tale. You promised to accept my judgment, so pay your debt, do your duty." The lawyer nodded. "Host," he said, "I agree. A promise is a debt, and I intend to pay it. I can't say it any better than that. A man should follow the same laws he sets for others." He paused for a moment, looking thoughtful. "But honestly, I don't have a good story ready." Chaucer, even though he's a bit clumsy with his rhymes, he's already told all the good ones. He's told more stories of lovers than Ovid ever did. "Why should I retell what's already been told?" The lawyer started listing them off. "He's told of Lucrece and Thisbe, the sword of Dido, the tears of Helen, the cruelty of Queen Medea hanging her own children. He's covered them all, but he never wrote about that wicked Canace or that horrible story of Apollonius. And I won't touch those nasty stories either," he shrugged. "But I'll make do. I don't care if I'm not as poetic as the muses. I'll speak in plain terms. Here is the tale." And with a sober look on his face, he began. "Once upon a time in Syria, there lived a group of very wealthy merchants. These were serious men, honest and successful. They traded spices and satins and cloth of gold. Their goods were so high quality that everyone wanted to do business with them. It just so happened that the masters of this company decided to make a trip to Rome. They didn't send messengers, they went themselves. They found a place to stay in the city and went about their business. While they were there, they started hearing rumors. People couldn't stop talking about the emperor's daughter, Lady Constance. The merchants heard about her every single day. The common people would say, 'Our emperor has a daughter who is unlike anyone else in the world. She is beautiful, but she has no pride. She is young, but she isn't foolish or childish. Virtue guides everything she does. She is humble, she is courteous, and her heart is the very chamber of holiness. Her hand is always open to give to the poor,' and every word of it was true. Eventually, the merchants finished their business. They loaded their ships and sailed back home to Syria. They returned to their old lives, living in prosperity. Now these merchants were friendly with the Sultan of Syria. Whenever they came back from a trip, the Sultan would treat them kindly. He loved to hear news from other kingdoms and learn about the wonders of the world. So naturally, the merchants told him about Lady Constance. They described her nobility and her beauty with such detail that the Sultan was captivated. Even though he had never seen her, he fell in love. He decided right then and there that he would love her for as long as he lived. Maybe it was written in the stars. You know, people say that when you're born, your death is already written in the heavens. The stars knew the fate of Hector and Achilles and Caesar long before they were born. But our human minds are too dull to read those signs clearly. The Sultan called his private council together. He laid it all out. "Unless I can marry Constance," he told them, "I am a dead man. I cannot live without her. You have to find a way to make this happen." His advisors argued, they debated, they looked for loopholes. But they ran into a massive problem: religion. They said, "Sir, no Christian prince is going to let his daughter marry under our laws given by the prophet." The Sultan didn't hesitate. "Then I will be baptized," he said. "I must be hers. I have no choice. Stop arguing and just save my life because I'm suffering here." So the negotiations began. Ambassadors traveled back and forth. The Pope got involved, the Church got involved. Finally, a deal was struck. The Sultan and all his barons and subjects would convert to Christianity. In exchange, the Sultan would get Constance and a certain amount of gold. The treaty was signed. Now imagine the preparations in Rome. The emperor ordered a magnificent trousseau for his daughter. Bishops, lords, ladies, and knights were chosen to accompany her to Syria. Everyone in the city prayed for Christ to bless this marriage. But then the day came, the fatal day of departure. Constance was overcome with sorrow. She rose from her bed, pale and shaking. She knew there was no way out. She had to leave the friends who had cared for her and go to a strange nation. She turned to her parents. "Father," she said, weeping, "and my mother, whom I love more than anything except Christ himself. Your wretched child, Constance, commends herself to you. I am going to Syria, and I will never see you again with these eyes." She cried out, "I must go to a barbarous nation because it is your will. But may Christ give me the grace to follow his commands. I am just a wretched woman. It doesn't matter if I perish. Women are born to suffer and be under the control of men." The weeping in that chamber was heartbreaking. It was louder than the weeping when Troy fell or when Rome was burned. But crying didn't change anything. She had to go. She was brought to the ship with great solemnity. "Now Jesus Christ be with you all," she said. And that was it, just farewell, fair Constance. She tried to put on a brave face, and the ship sailed away. But let's talk about the stars again for a second. The alignment was terrible. Mars was in a dark, angry position. It was a bad time for a journey. The emperor should have checked with a philosopher, but alas, we are often too ignorant or too slow. Meanwhile, in Syria, the Sultan's mother was watching everything. She was a well of vices. She saw that her son intended to leave their old religion, and she was furious. She called her own secret council. "Lords," she said, "you know my son is about to forsake the holy laws of the Quran. But I make a vow to God. I would rather stab myself in the heart than leave my faith." She looked at them. "What do we get from this new law? Slavery and penance, and hellfire afterwards because we denied our faith. But if you trust me, I can make us safe forever." They all swore to stand by her. "Here is the plan," she whispered. "We will pretend to accept Christianity. A little cold water on our heads won't hurt us. And I will throw a feast so great that the Sultan will pay for it with his life. And this new wife, she might be washed white in baptism, but she'll need a lot of water to wash away the red blood I'm going to spill." This woman was a serpent, a devil in disguise, but she played her part perfectly. She went to the Sultan and told him she wanted to convert. She begged for the honor of hosting the Christian guests. The Sultan was overjoyed. He knelt and thanked her, not knowing she was plotting his death. Finally, the Christian fleet arrived in Syria. A massive crowd went out to meet them. The Sultan sent word to his mother that his wife had arrived. The meeting was grand, Romans and Syrians together. The Sultan's mother received Constance with a smile so warm you'd think she was the best mother in the world. They rode to the city in a soft, solemn procession. The Sultan met them full of joy and bliss. But happiness in this world is short-lived. It's always sprinkled with bitterness. The end of our joy is always woe. The time came for the feast the old sultaness had prepared. The Christians arrived, young and old. It was a magnificent party with more delicacies than I can describe. But they paid a terrible price for that meal. Suddenly, at the height of the celebration, the trap was sprung. The Sultan and every single Christian at the table were hacked to pieces. Stabbed and cut down right there at the banquet, the old sultaness and her friends murdered them all. The only person left alive was Lady Constance. They didn't kill her, instead they dragged her down to the shore. They found a ship with no rudder, no way to steer. They put her on it. They gave her some treasure, plenty of food, and some clothes. And then they pushed her out into the salt sea. Learn to sail, they mocked, go back to Italy, oh my dear Constance. The emperor's young daughter, floating alone on the ocean. She blessed herself and looked at the cross of Christ. "O clear, blessed altar," she prayed, "save me from the fiend. Keep me safe on the day I drown." For years, yes, years she floated. She drifted through the Greek seas all the way to the Strait of Morocco. It was a wretched existence. She waited for death every single day. Now you might ask, why wasn't she slain at the feast? And how did she not starve to death for 3 years? Here is the answer: who saved Daniel in the lion's den? Everyone else was eaten, but he was spared. Who kept Jonah alive in the belly of the fish? Who let the Hebrews walk through the sea with dry feet? It was God. God wanted to show a miracle through her. Christ is the remedy for every harm. He does things that are dark to our human understanding. And the food: who fed Mary of Egypt in the cave? Who fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish? God sent his abundance to her in her great need. And so she drifted, protected by the hand of heaven, waiting to see where the waves would take her. So Constance drifted forth on that wild ocean. She floated until she finally ended up under a castle in Northumberland. I can't even tell you the name of it. Her ship ran aground in the sand and stuck there so fast that the tide couldn't even budge it. It was Christ's will that she stay right there. The constable of the castle came down to check out the wreck. He searched the ship and found this weary, heartbroken woman, along with all that treasure she still had. She spoke a kind of broken, messy Latin, begging him for mercy, just asking for her life to be spared from the misery she was in. Even though the Latin was corrupt, the constable understood enough. He took her to land. She knelt down and thanked God. But here's the thing: she wouldn't tell a soul who she really was, no matter what. She claimed the sea had bewildered her so much that she'd lost her memory. The constable and his wife felt so sorry for her they actually wept. And she was so diligent, so eager to serve and please everyone, that everybody who looked at her face just fell in love with her. Now the constable and his wife, Dame Hermgild, were pagans. The whole country was, but Hermgild loved Constance like her own life. And Constance stayed there a long time, praying and crying so many bitter tears, until eventually, through grace, she converted Hermgild to Christianity. You see, in that land, no Christians dared to assemble publicly. The pagans had conquered all those northern regions. The old Christian Britons had fled to Wales for refuge. But there were still a few secret Christians hiding near the castle. One of them was a blind man. He couldn't see with his eyes, but the eyes of his mind were wide open. One bright summer day, the constable, Hermgild, and Constance went for a walk by the sea. Just roaming back and forth, they met this crooked old blind man with his eyes shut tight. Suddenly the blind man cried out, "In the name of Christ, Dame Hermgild, give me my sight." Hermgild was terrified by that sound. She was scared her husband would kill her for being a Christian. But Constance told her to hold steady and do the will of Christ. So Hermgild healed him. The constable was absolutely astonished. He asked, "What is all this about?" Constance explained their faith so effectively that before evening, the constable was a believer too. The constable wasn't the lord of that place, though. He held the castle for Allah, the king of Northumberland, a wise man who fought hard against the Scots. But you know trouble is never far away. Satan saw how perfect Constance was and decided to ruin her. He made a young knight in that town fall madly in lust with her. He felt like he would die if he couldn't have her. But Constance wouldn't sin for anything. So out of spite, this knight plotted to have her killed shamefully. He waited until the constable was away, crept into Hermgild's room while they slept, and slit Hermgild's throat. Then, get this, he laid the bloody knife right next to Constance. Soon after, the constable came home with King Allah. They found the body and the king wept. Then they found the knife by Constance. She was too shocked to even speak, her wits completely gone from grief. They told King Allah the whole story, how she was found in a ship. The king's heart broke for her. She stood there like a lamb being led to death. The false knight accused her, but the people whispered that it couldn't be true. King Allah, being a gentle soul, decided to investigate deeper. He said, "Constance, you have no champion to fight for you. But Christ, who bound Satan, will be your champion today." Constance fell to her knees and prayed to God and Mary, "If I am guiltless, save me, or else I shall die." She looked around with a pale face, like someone being led to execution who knows there is no escape. King Allah was so moved he started crying. He called for a book of the Gospels. The knight swore on the book that Constance was guilty. Suddenly a hand appeared out of nowhere and smacked him on the neck so hard he fell like a stone, and both his eyes burst right out of his head. A voice boomed out in front of everyone, "You have slandered the guiltless daughter of Holy Church." "I will not be silent." Everyone was terrified of this vengeance except Constance. The king and many others converted right there on the spot. The false knight was executed, and soon after Jesus made King Allah marry Constance with great solemnity. So the shipwrecked woman became a queen. But not everyone was happy. The king's mother, Donegild, was a tyrant. Her heart felt like it would burst with anger. She thought it was a disgrace for her son to marry such a strange creature. Time passed, Constance got pregnant. While King Allah was away in Scotland hunting down his enemies, she gave birth to a baby boy named Maurice. The constable wrote a joyous letter to the king and gave it to a messenger. This messenger, looking to get ahead, rode straight to the king's mother, Donegild. He told her, "Madame, rejoice, the queen has a child." "Here is the sealed letter for the king." Donegild told him to stay the night. The messenger drank so much ale and wine that he passed out and snored like a pig. While he slept, Donegild stole the letter. She wrote a fake one, a horrible counterfeit. It said the queen had delivered a fiend-like creature, so horrible no one dared stay in the castle. It claimed Constance was an elf or a witch, and that everyone hated her. When the king read this letter, he was devastated. But he told no one of his sorrow. He wrote back with his own hand, "Welcome be the will of Christ. Keep the child and my wife safe until I return." He sealed it, weeping. but that foolish messenger got drunk at Donegild's place again on the way back. She stole the king's letter and wrote another fake. This one ordered the constable, under pain of hanging, to not let Constance stay in the kingdom even 3 days. It said he must put her and her son into the same ship she arrived in, push them out to sea, and charge her never to return. When the constable read this cruel letter, he cried out, "Lord, how can this world endure so much sin? Why does innocence suffer while the wicked prosper?" But he had to obey or die. On the 4th day, Constance, pale as death, went to her ship. She knelt on the sand and said, "Lord, welcome be your will. He who kept me safe before can keep me safe on the salt sea now." Her little child lay weeping in her arms. She whispered, "Peace, little son, I won't hurt you." She took the kerchief off her head and laid it over his little eyes so he wouldn't see the waves. She lulled him in her arms and looked up to heaven. She prayed to the Virgin Mary, "You saw your child slain before your eyes. My child is still alive, have pity on us." She looked at the constable and said, "Oh mercy, dear constable. Let my little child stay with you, but if you dare not save him, kiss him once in his father's name." She looked back at the land one last time and said, "Farewell, ruthless husband." She rose up, walked down the beach, and boarded the ship. The crowd followed her weeping. She prayed for her child to be quiet, blessed herself, and the ship, stocked with food for a long journey, drifted once again out into the driving sea. So King Aleph finally came home. He marched right into that castle I told you about, looking for his family. The first thing he asked was simple: "Where are my wife and child?" The constable felt his blood run cold, but he didn't lie. He told the king the plain, ugly truth, just as I told you. He even showed Allah the letter with the royal seal on it. He said, "Lord, I only did what you commanded on pain of death." Allah looked at that seal. He knew something was wrong. They grabbed the messenger, the one who had been drinking and sleeping on the job, and they didn't go easy on him. They tortured him until he cracked. He confessed everything, where he had slept each night and who he had talked to. It didn't take much wit to figure out exactly how this poison had entered the well. So the hand that wrote the letter was identified. It was Donegild, the king's own mother. I can't tell you exactly how it happened, but the result was clear. King Allah, without a shadow of a doubt, executed his mother. She had been a traitor to his blood and his crown. And that was the wretched end of old Donegild. But the sorrow Allah felt, night and day he wept for his wife and his child. It's more than I can describe. Now we have to go back to Constance. While Allah was grieving, she was drifting. For 5 long years she floated on the waves through pain and woe, wherever the ocean decided to take her. Finally, her ship approached land. It drifted under the walls of a heathen castle. The name of the place isn't in the records, so I can't tell you. But the sea cast her and her little boy up right there. Crowds came down from the castle to stare at this strange ship. But one night the castle's steward came down alone. God give him bad luck, because he was a thief and a man who had denied the faith. He climbed aboard and told Constance exactly what he wanted. He tried to force himself on her, whether she liked it or not. The poor woman was terrified. Her child was crying, she was crying. But in her desperation, she found a strength that wasn't her own. She struggled against him with everything she had. Suddenly, the thief lost his footing and fell backward, overboard into the dark sea. He drowned right there, a fitting vengeance. And so Constance was kept safe once again. Honestly, how does a weak woman have the strength to fight off a brute like that? It's like David standing up to Goliath. It wasn't muscle, it was grace. Her ship drifted on, leaving that terrible place. It passed through the narrow mouth of Gibraltar, driving sometimes west, sometimes south, sometimes east. It was a weary journey until finally there was an end to her heaviness. Let's leave Constance on the water for a moment and talk about the Roman emperor. Remember him. Constance's father. He had learned about the slaughter of the Christians in Syria and the dishonor done to his daughter by that wicked sultaness. He was furious. He had sent a senator with a royal army to take vengeance on the Syrians. And they did. They burned and fought for a long time. And now they were sailing home to Rome victorious. On his way back, the senator spotted a ship drifting in the open water. He pulled alongside it and found Constance sitting there looking pitiful. He had no idea who she was. And she wouldn't say a word about her identity, even if her life depended on it. But the senator was a good man. He brought her to Rome and gave her into the care of his wife. Here is the twist: the senator's wife was actually Constance's aunt. But she didn't recognize her niece at all. Constance and her son lived with them, quiet and holy, doing good works. Now back to King Allah. He was back in his own land, but the guilt of killing his mother was eating him alive. Eventually, he fell into such deep repentance that he decided to go to Rome. He wanted to seek penance from the Pope himself and ask forgiveness for his wicked deed. The news spread through Rome quickly: King Allah is coming on a pilgrimage. The senator, being a man of high status, rode out to meet him. It was customary to show respect to a visiting king. They greeted each other with great courtesy, and the senator invited King Allah to a feast at his house. And believe it or not, Constance's son, Maurice, went along to the feast with the senator. Some people say Constance asked the senator to take him, others say it just happened. Whatever the case, there the boy was. During the meal, the child stood looking right into the king's face. Allah was struck by the boy. He turned to the senator and asked, "Whose fair child is that standing over there?" "I don't know," the senator said. "He has a mother, but as far as I know, no father." Then the senator told Allah the story of how they found the boy and his mother drifting at sea. He added, "God knows, I've never seen a woman as virtuous as she is. She would rather die than do anything wicked." King Allah looked at the boy again. The child was the spitting image of Constance. Allah started to wonder. He remembered his wife's face clearly. He thought, could the boy's mother be my wife? He sighed deeply and left the table as soon as he politely could. His mind was racing. "I'm imagining things," he told himself. "My wife is dead in the ocean. But wait, if Christ could send her all the way to my country, couldn't he send her here to Rome?" That afternoon, Allah went to the senator's house to see this mysterious woman. The senator sent for Constance, but trust me, she didn't want to dance or celebrate. When she heard why she was being summoned, she could barely stand on her feet. When Allah saw her, he greeted her warmly, but then he looked closer. He wept. He knew it was her. Constance stood there dumb as a stone. Her heart was shut tight with distress because she remembered how unkind he had been, or at least, how unkind the letter had been. She fainted twice. Allah caught her. He made his excuses, pleading with her. "By God and all his saints," he cried, "I am as innocent of your suffering as this child Maurice is. If I'm lying, let the devil take me right now." It took a long time to calm the sobbing and the pain. But finally the truth was known. Allah was innocent. When they both realized the truth, they kissed 100 times. The joy between them was something no one has ever seen before or since. Then Constance made a request. She asked her husband to invite her father, the emperor, to dinner. But she added a condition: "Do not tell him a word about me." The next day, Allah rode out to meet the emperor and invited him to dine. The emperor graciously accepted. He looked at young Morris and thought about his lost daughter, but he said nothing. The morning of the dinner, Allah and Constance dressed in their finest clothes. They rode out in joy to meet the emperor on the street. When Constance saw her father, she jumped down from her horse and fell at his feet. "Father," she said, "Constance, your young child has been clean out of your memory. I am your daughter, the one you sent to Syria. It is me, father, the one who was put alone in the salt sea and condemned to die. Please send me into the heathen lands no more, but thank my Lord here for his kindness." I can't even begin to describe the emotion of that reunion. They sat down to dinner in total bliss. But as with all stories, we have to reach an end. Morris, the boy, eventually became the emperor himself and lived a holy life. But my tale is about Constance. When King Allah and his sweet wife Constance felt the time was right, they traveled back to England. They lived there in joy and quiet. But I have to tell you, joy in this world doesn't last long. It changes like the tide. Who has ever lived in perfect delight for even a day without some anger or envy or disturbance creeping in? A little less than a year later, death came for King Allah. Constance was heartbroken. She blessed his soul and then finally made her way back to Rome. She found her father still alive and well. She fell to her knees, weeping with tender gratitude, praising God 100,000 times. She and the emperor and all their friends lived in virtue and charity until they were parted by death. And that is where we leave them. And so Constance finally found her peace. I hope you enjoyed following her incredible journey. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps our ship sail further. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next tale. Safe travels, everyone.